today's Deanstructor Reviews Doctor Who, I look at the TV movie from 1996, and it has a special place for me because it is 25 years since it was broadcast this month. It's also 25 years since it cemented me as a Doctor Who fan, and it's the only TV outing of Paul McGann as the 8th Doctor. Some people will probably criticise me for saying it's the only TV outing, but Night of the Doctor was a short, and it was kind of like an online short. It wasn't broadcast as a proper television outing. This was, and it was broadcast on the 27th of May, 1996. It is, of course, part of what is classed the classic series, and it is the final entry in the television companion. As you know, with the classic series, I review the plots and synopsis of the stories from the television movie. It's classed in this book as Doctor Who. I like to colloquially know it as the TV movie. So here is the plot line for Doctor Who. The Master is apparently exterminated by the Daleks on Skaro, and the Doctor agrees to take his remains back to Gallifrey in the TARDIS. The Master's not really dead, however, but has transformed into a shapeless morphant creature. He causes the TARDIS to make an emergency landing on Earth in the city of San Francisco in the year 1999. The Doctor emerges from the ship to find himself in the midst of a street battle between rival gangs. He sustains gunshot wounds, and accompanied by young gang member Chang Li, is taken to hospital for emergency treatment. Surgeon Dr. Grace Holloway attempts to save his life, but failing to understand his alien physiology actually causes his death. The Doctor later regenerates into his 8th physical form. The Master has meanwhile taken over the body of an ambulance driver named Bruce. This is just a temporary measure until he can achieve his ultimate goal, to inhabit the Doctor's body. He gains access to the Doctor's TARDIS, and, with lies and false promises, wins Chang Li over to his side. The Doctor manages to convince Grace that he's the same man that she thought had died on the operating table, and that he is an alien Time Lord, a bleak half-human on his mother's side. Together they race against time to prevent the Master's scheme from bringing about Earth's destruction at midnight on the 31st of December. They eventually succeed, and the Master is sucked into the Eye of Harmony within the TARDIS's cloister room. The Doctor bids farewell to Grace and Chang Li, who ultimately saw the error of his ways, and departs from the TARDIS as the world celebrates the millennium. So as I mentioned in the introduction to this video, I said that this is the story that made me a Doctor Who fan, to all intents and purposes. It piqued my interest enough to make me go back and have a look at the rest of the series, and it made me ultimately a fan of certain Doctors more than others. But it is actually not the pilot that everybody wanted, and it's very clear to see that it's stuck in the middle between what was the classic series, what is now the revived series, and a what could have been is there, but is it a what could have been that really would have worked in this day and age? The Matt Smith era proves that Doctor Who of the old-fashioned type, British production type, could work in America, and kick-started that. And that Britishness has always been something that made Doctor Who work in the classic era as well, when it's been shown on PBS channels and things like that. The TV movie tries to do a mix of some of the American 90s action-adventure stuff you were seeing a lot of at that time, and also try and get the Britishness in there. It doesn't work well on both. There's a few juxtapositions on there. The Doctor getting been shot, just through a mundane street battle is shocking enough. I mean, the traffic jam thing and the chase, the car chase, don't get me wrong, there's been chases in the past, but it doesn't feel like a Doctor Who type chase. It feels very much like an action-adventure movie of the 90s and the 80s of America. Having the Master as an American actor with Eric Roberts is not a bad idea, and I'll get into more about his acting style there. Daphne Ashbrook works as a companion. She's more akin to the sort of Marthas and Donnas that you get in the new series than the Aces and Mels that you get in the old. She's certainly a step up from the last American companion that we had in regards to character, but regards to warmth and a likability, Nicola Bryant's Perry's better in some respects. Don't get me wrong, Daphne Ashbrook does a brilliant job with what she's got, but there's not enough there to hook you thinking she could be a great companion in the companion days of old. There is that element there of the love interest side, which I'll get to. Just a disclaimer here, I have seen for this review the uncut full version of Doctor Who, because in the UK about 2 minutes of it was cut out for audience taste. It was broadcast, if I remember rightly, it was broadcast about 8 at night. So it was broadcast kind of pre-Watershed, so some elements have been taken out to compensate for that. The shootout with the gang leaders just before the TARDIS arrives is substantially reduced. You get the bits of them shooting the TARDIS, but the whole gunfight just before isn't there. The ambulance panning that you see in there, where you see the snake of the master's morphless form rather, going around the ambulance. That's a bit more elongated than you would have in the actual British version. The Doctor screaming in pain before the final defibrillation after he goes into seizure on the operating table. And the morgue scene after the regeneration is a little bit longer than what you see in the television version that you saw in the UK. So those are the changes. I actually think the longer version works better. The uncut version works better. I'm not saying that the British version's cuts aren't bad. They're okay. They work for the nature of the audience, but it just flows a little bit better those extra 2 minutes in the version that you see there. It is the version that's on the DVD, and it is the version you see in any American stuff in the UK, but it is the DVD version. The British version's actually on the VHS. I'm not sure if the British version's on the DVD special edition. I'll need to check that. You can always leave a comment down below about that, of course. Now, there's one misconception I want to get through here. The Doctor doesn't die due to the gunshot wounds. He dies due to the botched exploratory surgery for his, what they thought was high fibrillation of his heart. And he dies from the botched surgery. He doesn't die from the gunshot wounds, and that's kind of a misconception some people have. The Seventh Doctor gets shot down. He doesn't get shot down. It's referenced in Big Finish that he gets shot down. It isn't shot down. He dies because the gunshot wounds were minor, a couple in his leg and one in his shoulder, but nothing hit any vital. They make that clear in the script. It's the exploratory surgery that kills him. The elements that the Doctor does in here in regards to name dropping, I can see a character like McGann's Doctor, and certainly in the Big Finishes, they develop that and make that more of a thing, of the Doctor being more affable and friendly and a bit more eccentric and scatty, but still this kind of handsome, lovable Doctor. I mean, certainly in the Big Finish monthly adventures with Charlie Pollard, there's definitely that fact of that he's more of a romantic figure to her, and that comes from here. But the name dropping he does with the security guard about what they'll do in the future, what he'll do in the future, about that exam he takes on poetry, which helps him then help him with earthquakes about 10 years' time. You've then got the thing that the Doctor suggested Chang Li at the end about don't being in San Francisco next Christmas time. And then he was about to say what Grace has, after basically saying for most of it, no, don't say anything, don't do it, I'm not going to say anything to you. And then she basically says, no, I don't want to know. Now, they play on that. I think it's in the comics. I think it's in the Doctor Who magazine comics when she comes back as a guest appearance. The Doctor Who magazine comments are playing on that, and they took that line. But this whole thing about the Doctor having premonitions and playing on that feeling is an interesting concept, and they could have ran with that maybe a little bit more if it had gone to full series. That's an interesting little concept there. The Doctor tinkering around with people's expectations and having a carry on really of the Seventh Doctor and the manipulation the Seventh Doctor had, and still having those elements to the Doctor. That would have been interesting to see if that kind of carried on. One of the big things I liked about this Doctor was his scattiness that happens. It's very much played on in the audio adventures I've listened to of him, especially of the monthly adventures run. I haven't really listened to Lucy Miller and the Dark Eye stuff yet, but of the adventures you hear in the monthly adventures of Big Finish, they play very much on Paul McGann's eccentricities that he's put towards the role at the time of the 96 movie, and they've developed that. And I like that scattiness. I like that fact that he's a lot more whimsical. He's a lot more fast thinking, fast talking. He's very quick in his wit in his thing, and it's very quickly how he turns the dime with his memories. So he's talking about the memory of Gallifrey when they go out for a walk, him and Grace, and about the meteor shower and everything. And then turn around and he said, these shoes, they fit perfectly from the shoes that Grace gave him about a few minutes before, and runs off. And it's kind of, that's kind of turn of the coin. When Grace is checking his hearts, when he sat down, and he's thinking about Puccini drawing that picture or Da Vinci drawing that picture when, and talking about how he had a cold, and it kind of flips between it. So the doctor then turns around and said, when Grace says, oh my God, it's not real, or whatever, she gets surprised about the two hearts, and the doctor makes a quip about that, and then goes on about the fact about how Puccini didn't finish his notes, or was it Puccini or Mozart? I can't remember. It was one of them. About didn't finish the notes of one of his compositions, and that kind of flip between different things that you've. To be fair, you don't really see that in the previous couple of Doctors. McCoy's very focused on what he wants. Colin Baker has got the pompous side to the Doctor that's there. Peter Davison's more friendly and affable and thinks about it, but it doesn't really come across. It's something really that Tom Baker used to do. So it's very drawing on the Fourth Doctor in regards to some of those characteristics there. Let's get the clunker out of the room. Let's get half human out the way. In hindsight, they've ignored it. They've just not played it at all in the revived series. All for the better, because as far as I'm concerned, the Timeless Child element is more realistic to the Doctor's character than the half-human element, and I know that's controversial in itself. I understand why it's controversial at the time. It's trying to give an element of something more interesting about the Doctor when it isn't really there. It's used as throwaway, really, and I treat it as such on here. The TARDIS design, until now, it was a riff on the same thing with the roundels. The most different design of the TARDIS console room up to this point was season 14's console room, the wood panel one, the secondary control room. And this TV movie actually gives proof that you can have a TARDIS of virtually anything, any shape, any size, any design, that follows through into the new series with the designs. They all still have a similar kind of central console theme, but what the interior is around it definitely has started off the back of what happened in the TV movie. So that is probably one of the biggest influences that the TV movie has in the new series, the fact that TARDIS can be designed to look like anything, effectively, and it starts in this story. The Eye of Harmony being included inside the TARDIS workings, it's the first time it's referenced that, and it is backed up later on in Journey to the Centre of the TARDIS, that there is an actual Eye of Harmony in the TARDIS. Before that, the Eye of Harmony was seen as a single source that all TARDISes draw from, and it wasn't seen as something that could be individually in each TARDIS. I think it is probably an inlet to the main thing, but this whole idea of having the Eye of Harmony in the TARDIS starts in this story, and it's interesting. It's an interesting way of doing it. There's other bits I'll come back to in a minute, but let's just go through some of the castings. So, you have Paul McGann, of course, playing the Eighth Doctor. I've kind of gone over Paul McGann mostly on this already, and I actually do enjoy his performance here. It's just a shame that he didn't get a chance to carry on in a series in the mid-90s. I think it probably would have worked quite well with that character, and there's a lot of elements there that you could develop on, and to be fair, the definitive McGann Eighth Doctor character is really the Big Finish one. So if you want to find out what the Eighth Doctor's really liked as a continuing character, I would say Big Finish is where you go to if you want to have more Eighth Doctor. And the elements of the Eighth Doctor that you see in Big Finish is what comes across in Night of the Doctor, the special that Paul McGann did for the 50th anniversary back in 2013. Most of the elements that I like about the Eighth Doctor carries on into the Big Finish, and this fast-talking, quick-witted, always thinking, overthinking things. I like that character, and Paul McGann is perfect casting, and I'm so glad they managed to keep a British actor in there. Daphne Ashbrook does a good job. It's solid enough. Mid-90s, semi-girl power type feeling. Spice Girls were just on the cusp of becoming relevant in culture, but that sort of building up of women being a stronger role and being This thing when she turns around and tells him off when he says, "I'm a Time Lord, I can live again, I can die and come alive again." She said, "Don't give me that crap," she says. At one point, that kind of tough attitude coming across. It's a good performance, and I really wish, obviously, that they left it open that she wouldn't be there when he carried on, but they kind of left the door open that she could have came back. And I really hope that at some point that Daphne Ashbrook does do something on Big Finish with Paul McGann. I'd love to see how that relationship developed as the Grace and the Doctor properly. Yu Ji-so, my apologies, I'm butchering that. He's solid enough as Chang Li. This cocky guy falls in very quickly to the Master's charms, or discharms. It's an interesting role. He plays it strong enough, but it's not really stand out as such. The best role, I think, is the best role apart from Paul McGann, Daphne Ashbrook, is Eric Roberts. Now, some people don't like that Master. He's too campy. He's too over the top. He's too scene chewing. Yes, there is that element, but I think it's played not too badly. It's not too camp. If you look at some of the later Masters that you get, Michelle Gomez, John Sim, Sacha Dhawan, these manic elements you see in these Masters all come and stem from the more campiness, manic nature of Eric Roberts. He's more thoroughly evil. He's got more of an evil streak than Ainley did. Anthony Ainley did as the Master, but that kind of campness kind of works for this story. And there is some very horrible elements in there. The bit when he breaks Bruce's wife's necks, they call the character Miranda, I believe. The evilness when he's trying to turn Lee in the console room is quite thrilling. Eric Roberts gets a bad rap, but he's not as bad as people make out. It's actually pretty solid. The interesting thing I liked of this is that his actual real life Eliza plays Miranda, Bruce the ambulance driver, wife, who the Master takes over. I thought that was quite interesting that they play off each other. I wonder if she was just brought in because they needed a wife and they couldn't find one, so they just said, "Hey Eric, can you bring your wife in for this? Is that alright?" And he said, "Oh, no problem." The rest of the cast, bit party, not really much going on. I can't really make much comments about them. Of course, Sylvester McCoy is there as the old Doctor, and it's not quite where I would expect the Seventh Doctor to be by the end of his life, but you can get the impression, obviously, he's physically older. You can see that. He's probably a bit more world-weary and wanted to change. It's interesting. But it's McCoy. It's definitely a McCoy Doctor. It just, there's not enough for him there. And I actually think maybe they should have done what they did with the new series and not even involve Regeneration and just have him out. I know why he did it, because he wanted to make sure he passed the baton on, because he never got the chance to have that properly with Colin Baker when Colin Baker was sacked and all that. So I get why he was there and he wanted to do it. And he does a decent job. But is the Seventh Doctor really needed? I don't know. I'm not sure. One thing I did like about Grace, and I forgot about that, was her sassiness and her sarcasm. The one bit I did like was the fact when she walks in the TARDIS, and then she makes a joke about it's one of the best big and inside jokes I remember of the series, where she's mentioning about, that would when the TARDIS travels in time and space, explains the Doctor. Oh, that would explain the temporal displacement we experienced as he went over the threshold, she said quite sarcastically. And it's the Doctor says, "If you like," and he's suspecting it's bigger on the inside. He doesn't get it. I think it's quite funny. I think that's quite a good little line there. The kisses. It's a very American thing. I understand why the controversy was there at point, because the Doctor was very asexual up to that point. But to be fair, that emotional side, that kiss, I think, probably let the floodgates open for what happened afterwards with the Doctor. And I think very much it would have been a bit more controversial with the love story that Rose and the Doctor had in the first couple of series of the Revive series, if you didn't have the kisses initially in the TV movie. So it kind of opened the floodgates a little bit more to make that a bit more acceptable and not as controversial overall. I don't have a problem with it 25 years later. I didn't really have a problem at the time, but then again, I didn't understand Doctor Who that well. It is an improved budget from what went before. Definitely a big budget. Reports were it was something like $6 million it cost to make it at the time. Now, considering the rumour is it's about $1 million an episode at the moment with the modern series, it just shows you how much money was thrown into it. Obviously, technology makes things a lot easier to work with now than it used to, and there's a couple of CGI effects that are very 90s. But it's an up in quality in regards to production values. In story, though, it's ultimately pretty weak. It's quite a runaround. It's not the Doctor Who elements are there to make it enough to be Doctor Who, but it isn't Doctor Who in my eyes, considering the rest of the series. Doctor Who's always good at changing its format and working around, but it's too Americanized, too sanitized. And yes, I would have loved to see this go to series to see what they did with it, but I don't think it would have been a long-term concern. I think it may have been 1, maybe 2 series, and that was it. I don't think they would have been able to carry it on a long time with the format it is. It went down well in the UK. It probably would have carried on well in the UK. It wasn't very good in America. That's what killed off the pilot. And if the plot lines were very similar to what they got here, that's a problem. It's too continuity loaded. It needs to be very simple, the story, and gently guide it in. Obviously, they've got a pilot. They've got to cram so much in. The exposition about how the Time Lord works is fine. I probably wouldn't have included the 7th Doctor, would have taken him out of it. Possibly what I possibly would have done is maybe got to the morgue scene, start from there, have maybe a couple of the flashbacks and what happened up to there with maybe McCoy making a cameo, but don't focus the first 20 minutes on setting up the scene for the Doctor to be shot, killed by the heart surgery, and then regenerate. I would have started maybe the morgue scene and worked back a couple of flashbacks to give more intrigue and maybe make it develop that way. And maybe then you'd be able to spend a bit more time in the remaining 70 minutes with the extra time you've got to maybe flesh out the story a bit more of a runaround it was. Ultimately, the direction's fine. No issue with that. The music is very 90s with its orchestral. I don't have a problem with it. Those elements I don't really focus on here. It's more the story and the enjoyment of it. And I do enjoy it as a story, but it's not strong. It's not one of the strongest stories of the run. Would it have been enough if the conditions were right in America? Yes, I think it would have. Would it have ran for a long time? No, I don't think it would. Overall, though, I would give this review 3 TARDISes out of 5 for this story. Okay, let's see how that fits with the rest of the stories that have been done so far. The TV movie sits at 3 TARDISes out of 5 alongside The Idiot's Lantern, Battlefield, Arc of Infinity, Warrior's Gate, Silver Nemesis, 42 and The Crusade. At the bottom is still Time Lash with 2.5 TARDISes out of 5. At the top is still, with 4.5 TARDISes out of 5, The Happiness Patrol, Inferno, The Day of the Doctor, The Caves of Androzani, Tomb of the Cybermen and Dalek. That's it for now. Thanks guys for watching as always. If you like this video, don't forget to like it and share it with the hashtag teamstructor, and also hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you know when a new video comes out. If you want to be more than just a sharer of the videos, you can be part of Team Structor through our Patreon. You can join for as little as $1 per month and you get the chance to have a credit on the videos, you get a chance to sneaky peeks of videos coming up, and also some special extra videos that sit in there as well, including a Kid Structor for X-rated Rainbow from February that you can see if you're a tier 3 subscriber. Have a look, check out the Patreon at patreon.com/deanstructor. That's it for now, guys. Thanks, guys, for watching as always. A new video every Sunday, general rule, at 4 PM GMT, and I shall see you then. Until next time, guys, see you later.